Hello viewers, Super GT here. We've got a great race for you in store today on, of course, Gran Turismo Sport around Brands Hatch, an 18-lapper, fairly lengthy race, and it's going to go down to the wire, hopefully. Let's see if it does. On pole position we have a Porsche, and second place we've got the Mitsubishi, the German, and here's myself, Super GT, third place on the grid. About 8 tenths, nearly 9 tenths off of the pole time, but I didn't really set my best lap really, so it kind of bodes well. I can definitely go quicker than 9 tenths off of pole. I probably could have roughly matched that time that he set. And let's see how it pans out then at Brands Hatch. 18 laps, third place on the grid. I've gone for the Lexus, and I seem to be a fan of Lexus recently. You can see as we briefly look behind, the guys behind already beginning to wipe each other out, spin out, and all sorts of bad things. And as I said, that's the reason really why I only showed the top 3 on the grid, because anyone else from 4th backwards doesn't really matter. You see the gap already developing to the McLaren, the Frenchman in the McLaren. So coming through Hawthorne's Bend and into Westfield around the Grand Prix circuit of Brands Hatch, the long configuration. So this is going to be a close race, I think. You've got 3 different cars. The Porsche is typically one of the best cars in Group 3. The Mitsubishi, I must say, I haven't really seen it being used too much. Neither the Lexus, for that matter. And you can see as we look behind, the gap is already about 7 seconds. So, I mean, God knows what the hell those people behind are doing to make that gap that big after 1 lap. But clearly it just proves that too much fighting isn't a good thing, and you can see this is exactly what's happened ahead. The Mitsubishi goes for a move on the Porsche, makes contact, and as a result I'm going to go through into the lead. So I'm going to take quite an easy route through to first place, but it certainly isn't going to be an easy race from here to the end. Still 17 laps remaining. These 2 guys were faster than me in qualifying, and on evidence of that first lap they seem to have fairly good pace, so I can't really kind of let off the gas and just give up and let it come to me, because it's not going to be easy at all. I'm going to have to keep full concentration for another, let's say, 25 minutes or so, which will be the total length of this race. It can be fairly tricky to keep your concentration for that long and not make any mistakes at all. But the idea really is that you just make less mistakes than your opponents, and then ideally you would come out on top in that way. I mean, it's not always down to pure race pace. Just being consistent, not making many mistakes, that can massively help in your quest to become the greatest Gran Turismo player of all time. Hitting that cone, playing a risky game. The cones really don't hang about on this game. They do mess you up if you go into a direct duel with them. And that one nearly pushed me off the circuit. So then rounding out Paddock Hill Bend up into Druids for the 3rd time. Setting the fastest lap on that 2nd lap, although that did involve contact between the 2nd and 3rd place drivers there. So they, of course, wouldn't have got a good lap at all. So down through Graham Hill Bend, you can see the Porsche beginning to reel me back in. So he's not really being holding back on this 3rd lap and most of the 2nd lap. Constantly monitoring the gap on the top left of the screen. So of course you can look behind, but I think monitoring that gap is probably the best way to really keep tabs on how close your opponents are. So into Westfield Bend. This is a very difficult section, and especially Sheen curve as we're coming up to here. Blind entries go in, can be very deceiving. You do have to go in quite early and be very committed, be very brave to really maximise that one. Doing another bunny hop over that cone on the exit of Stirling's as we come up into the final corner of the track onto the main straight. So that is 3 laps of Brands Hatch done, and it seems to have gone fairly well so far, and not really anything in the way of many mistakes going on At the moment, of course, the second place, third place guys have had a mishap early on. But this is where really there's a transition in pressure. Because I'm the one ahead and I've got a Porsche right on my tail who's quick and he's in a quick car, the pressure's all on me really, just to keep my cool, not make any mistakes. And as long as I hit my braking points, my apexes, got a little bit wide there, but as long as I do the right kinds of things, then there's not much he can do unless he can pull off a really spectacular move. He's on the left hand side here, coming up into Hawthorne's Bend, and he's just going to bail right out. So perhaps a sensible thing to do is, I mean, it's going to be impossible to fight around the outside around a long corner like that. So he's going to back out and just make sure he preserves his second place. The Mitsubishi very close though. So you can see that the train of Super GT is being formed here around Brands Hatch, as they're both stuck behind me. But as long as I, again, as I say, as long as I keep to my guns, stick to my guns, should be what I said, and just make sure I do everything correctly, then there's not much they can do. I'm still hitting my braking points, still hitting those apexes. It's going to be really difficult for them to really make a good pass on me. And this is the thing, and I'm talking about transitions here. If I just block them for long enough, eventually the transition will be from second place trying to fight with me to third place trying to fight with second. So if I can just back this Porsche up enough, then those two behind will start fighting even more, and then that's my chance that I've got to take to begin to pull away. So if I can just keep staying on track, and eventually these two guys will begin to fight each other. Hopefully that Mitsubishi will get impatient with the Porsche and he will begin to start attacking him, and then that'll be my chance to try to pull away. So then down the dip, Pilgrim's Drop, up in towards Hawthorne Bend, braking 200 metres or 200 yards before the corner. We're running out wide onto the curb. A little bit of grass, and the cones there have been wiped away from the entry into Westfield, so having to use my own initiative on that one. Although it's a fairly simple braking point, all in all. Hitting the apex nicely, getting into the race, building up my consistency as you go on. A little bit wide from the apex through Sterling's, but it's, again, not too bad, consistent, and I'm not really making a huge error. So I mean, it wasn't quite on the apex, but at least it wasn't 2,000 miles away. Could be a lot worse. Coming across the line, the Porsche very close, not going to go defensive. I don't think he can really go for a lunge from that far back. And again, if I hit my braking points, there's not much he can do. And by going defensive, it kind of brings on more attacking from the guy behind as they get more and more desperate to get past you. And it puts you out of position, of course. So if you go in narrow, you're going to come out slow on the other side. And coming through Graham Hill Bend, there we go, there's the mistake we're looking for. The Porsche coming out very wide, so perhaps getting rather agitated. They can't quite get past. I've done a good job so far in holding station. So there's the gap. You see the gap opened up to the Porsche. So now it's roles reversed here for the Mitsubishi and the Porsche. So the German now can take his chance to try to get into the lead of the race. So a little bit wide through Westfield, and now the German is right on my tail, coming up into Sheen Curve. And this is where it's all going to begin to unravel. Two wheels onto the grass, and I've lost two positions. So that's an absolute gift for these two guys to go through. I've made it hard for them so far, but I do something very silly like that and lose two positions, although I'm not too far away. I mean, it's not completely over yet. I'm going to have to try to get back to some consistent battling, and hopefully these two guys will start battling and that'll bring me back into contention. Through Graham Hill Bend, the Mitsubishi very wide is going to slide back onto the track. There is a yellow flag, and there is the evidence of someone spinning out. The German in the Mitsubishi has done himself no favours. He's done myself a favour, and of course my fellow Brit in the Porsche. So we're going to scan ahead to the end of lap 7. So you can see the gap remaining fairly constant, but I make this big error. In fact, I think I was gaining slightly, and I was just looking at the map and all the data. You can get kind of distracted by all this data. You see the gap going back up to about 4 seconds, and it was just hovering under 2, so I've lost a couple of seconds, which can be crucial in a race as close as this one, where even a tenth or two per lap gained or lost is massive. You know, a 2-second time loss from one mistake is huge. Now this poses another very questionable kind of situation to be in, because ideally we both want to work together to try to reel back in this Porsche, but you just hope that the guy behind isn't going to start battling with you too much. So that mistake has put me right into the claws of, or the range, the dive bombing range, if you like, of the German. So he's gonna be within range. We've got overtaking banned, notification yellow flag is out. Just hoping that it was the Porsche, but it's not. I can't quite spot who was off there. We've got a green flag on the exit of Surtees. So the German, you see the gap, probably not big enough for me to not worry about, but he's still fairly close. And I just hope that he doesn't get any really closer than that. Otherwise I'm going to have to start kind of defending. Or this is the decision you have to kind of make sometimes. Is it worth defending and losing loads of time? Or is it worth just, if he's going to go for it, just let him go past? Minimum time loss. If you're aiming to win the race, I think go for that minimum time loss option. If you're settling for second, then just defend, then just keep him behind. This is the kind of decision you have to be making throughout the race. And he's ominously lurking in my rear view mirror as we go into the final corner. Now this is lap 8, we're coming across the line to begin the 9th lap, and the 9th lap signifies, or the end of the 9th lap signifies halfway into the race. So unless you're going to do a no stopper, we are looking to pit at the end of this lap. So he's looking up the inside. I'm not going to be phased by that. I'm not going to deviate from my racing line, staying ahead. And you see the gap to the Porsche just briefly there, still hovering around about 3.5 seconds. So he's kind of pinned me there about 3.5 seconds. The Mitsubishi very close to go for a move. This corner is very difficult to go for a move. I think when a race is this close, you're looking often for a mistake from the driver ahead to really go for the move, or you kind of got to put them out of position by making them defend when they shouldn't have defended. This is why I'm not defending a huge amount. In that kind of corner there, there's just no need to defend. It's not a corner where they can go for a lunge. So, well, they could, but it probably wouldn't come off very well, it must be said. So there are certain corners where you just really don't need to defend, because it's just almost impossible to go for a move, a clean move that is. So I'm not going to defend where I don't have to. You can see just how close he is. His nose is poking into the bottom of the screen to say hi. Now this is the 9th lap. As I said, we're going to go for the pit lane. I'll go a little bit wide. Worryingly, he's on my right hand side there, but I am just going to cut across last second with quite a crap pit entry as we graze across the barrier. And you see here, I had 15% fuel left. He had 8%. So it shows that I was a little bit better, a little bit more economical on fuel. So that's going to save me a little bit of time in the pit stops. So as we come out, we'll see exactly how much difference that makes. There it is. Maybe I gained about a second because he was right on my tail. In fact, we actually got a second, 1.3 second penalty for that shoddy job of entering the pit lane. So you can try to save as much time on entry as you like, but if you save too much by smashing into the wall, you will get a penalty. So I wouldn't recommend that at all. But as a result of that slight fuel saving gain over the German, we've gained about 1.5 seconds over him. So that gives me brief respite for maybe a couple of laps. It remains to be seen exactly how much he's going to gain on me. You see the gap there, there it is. Exact evidence of how big that gap is. Definitely bigger than it was a lap ago. And that's going to give me some breathing space now, just to try to really have a good out lap and get onto terms with the Porsche. So this is always a pivotal stage in the race, the pit stops. It tells you who's been good on their tyres, who's been good on fuel use. So of course, by saving by saving fuel, you're going to have less time spent in the pits. By saving your tyres, you're going to have a faster car at the end of your stint. So this is the end of lap number 10, and the leader has gone into the pits. He's coming out now. Incidentally, he had about 9% fuel, but he did do an extra lap compared to me, so I had 15%. He's done an extra lap, so I think we've both used about the same amount of fuel. We can see him just around the corner, around Druid's Bend at the top of the hill, and the gap is just under 4 seconds, about 3.5. So it's pretty much the same as it was, pretty much the same gap. Interestingly, he went an extra lap, not quite sure why he did that. Perhaps just wanting to differ his strategy slightly compared to us two behind. But now we're going to set, you see there, briefly see a purple sector. That is quite crucial. I think if I really want to have any ambition of winning this race, I need to kind of get on it now, as soon as possible. Begin to put the pressure on. I think if you leave it too late, drivers become very comfortable with their position. He's got 3.5 seconds over me, or 3 seconds now, and if he has that with 2 laps to go, he'll probably be quite comfortable. If I can start to get that gap down now, the pressure will begin to shift over to him. So earlier on in the race, the pressure was on me to keep them behind. They were right behind, but now the pressure is on him to keep at bay a charging Lexus around the Brands Hatch circuit. So here we go. Interestingly, the gap down to less than 2 seconds, so I've gained almost 2 seconds on that lap. Purple sector, 124.7. Now that is another way to put pressure onto someone. Another way you can do it, by setting the fastest lap. And well, I mean, unless he doesn't look at that, it's on the left hand side of the screen there. Unless he's not looking at it, then he's gonna notice that the guy in second is setting the fastest lap in the race. The guy behind you is the fastest person on the circuit, which is quite something to worry about, you know. So if I can consistently set some fastest laps, if I can improve upon that fastest lap and make it go down even more, then it's something else he's going to take notice of as we go down Pilgrim's Drop into Hawthorne's Bend. Dingle is just round after Westfield. So this is Westfield here, braking halfway between the two white boards on the left hand side, and then now we go down Dingle into Sheen Curve, probably the hardest corner on the track to get consistently right. Very difficult, very easy to run 2 wheels off onto the left hand side, which I've already done in this race. So you can see again, purple sector, 2 attempts up on our PB, a bit of a slide. You see just how much I am pushing this car to get onto terms with my fellow Brit in the lead. We've got a couple of back markers here. So for some reason the strength of the field wasn't too high. Only the top 3 drivers were A rating or above. But it's not really mattering too much if that guy spins off completely. It doesn't matter too much, because as long as the race is good at the front, then that's all that matters. So the gap down to 1.7. So on that second lap, only gaining a small amount, but you see my fastest lap improved to 124.5. So he presumably setting at 124.7. So he's quite quickly got up to speed on his new set of tyres. So I think it takes maybe your out lap isn't going to be the best, or you're still warming up your tyres, but then your second lap out, you are fully up to speed, and you should be able to lap quite comfortably at the kind of speeds that you should be expecting to lap at. So through Hawthorne, running a little bit wide, I think just taking my eye off the ball a little bit, the back marker here, just something of a distraction. I mean, he's doing nothing wrong, apart from driving a little bit wide over the grass, but it's just something to potentially distract you from your racing line. We're trading mistakes here. The gap went briefly above 2 seconds, then it's back down to 1.8 again. That is the gap there. That is not a big gap for nearly 13 laps of racing. That's not a big gap at all. Now this is lap 15, so the race is getting into the twilight stages, and the gap around about 2.5 now, so I haven't been able to capitalise on my earlier momentum into Stirling's Bend, just pushing a little bit too much. Once again, the back markers perhaps putting me off, distracting me slightly, but that is my mistake, completely my mistake, and that pretty much I think seals the race, unless McSpongy is going to make a very big error. So this is the final lap. I've kind of timed the fuel quite well. with 0.5 laps remaining, pretty much about 0.3 actual laps remaining, and I'm just going to get 2 wheels wide on the grass on the exit of Sheen Curve. So ultimately here, I think there was potential for a race win. I quite simply made too many mistakes, and was it down to the pressure? Maybe, but I think what it was, the first mistake I made going into Sheen Curve with the Mitsubishi right behind, it wasn't so much pressure, it was just I was distracted, and I quite simply made a very silly mistake. So that is the result, and ultimately finishing 16 seconds off the lead. It should have been a lot closer, if not a win. But well, these are the races you kind of learn from, and I think it was still a very good race, and I think especially in the second phase after the pit stop, really trying to reel him in, that was a good little section. But there we go, guys. I do hope you enjoyed this video as always. Do let me know your thoughts. Second place around Brands Hatch, I think it was still a very good race indeed. Let me know your thoughts. Subscribe for more of the same. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. I shall see you next time. Goodbye.
Listen.